Migration has been defined themes throughout human history, but in America, it carries particular weight. Millions of people from Central America and Venezuela are leaving their homes due to conflict, economic collapse, and lack of opportunities. Today, we will examine the causes behind this migration, the challenge migration face, and the human stories that behind these experiences to life. Specifically, we will discuss Central American migration to the United States and the Venezuelan migration crisis across South America. We will reflect on how history, policy, and humanity interest in these movements. To understand migration from Central America, we must look at history roots. In the 20th century, the United States played a significant role in shaping political outcomes in centers like Guatemala and El Salvador. For example, the U.S. supported military coups and authoritarian regimes to protect its economic interest. In Guatemala, the overthrow of President Arbenz in 1954 led to decades of civil war, displacing hundreds of thousands of people. Similarly, in El Salvador, U.S. funding fueled a brutal civil war in the 1980s, forcing families to flee violence. Behind historical conflicts, poverty remains a central factor today. Over half of Central Americans live in poverty, struggling to access jobs, education, or healthcare. With few options at home, migration becomes a desperate choice. This interconnected issue highlights how migration is often the result of political and economic systems, not individual choices. While Central American migration has deep historical roots, Venezuela's crisis is more recent. Venezuela was once the wealthiest country in Latin America, but years of economic mismanagement and political corruption have brought it to its knees. Hyperinflation has made everyday items like food and medicine unaffordable. For example, by 2018, Venezuela's inflation rate had reached over 1 million. Jobs disappeared and hospitals ran out of essential supplies, pushing people to flee. The scale of migration is struggling. Over 7 million Venezuelans have left the country since 2015, making it one of the largest displacement crises in world history. Many walks for days through Colombia, often carrying children and their belongings on foot. Despite this resilience, they face stigma, hunger, and exploitation in neighboring countries. Migrants from Central America and Venezuela take incredibly dangerous journey. Let's look at Central America first. To reach the United States, many migrants travel through Mexico, a journey fraught with dangers. One political infamous route is the Darien Gap, a lawless jungle between Colombia and Panama. Migrants risk drowning, disease, and violence from armed groups, yet thousands attempt this crossing every year. Meanwhile, Venezuelan migrants follow routes into South America. Most travel through Colombia, where many settle temporarily or continue to Peru, Ecuador, and Chile. Migrants often walk from days with little food or shelter. Some are forced to rely on informal work or charity to survive. These journeys are not only physically taxing but emotionally draining, as migrants leave their home behind with a central future ahead. Behind every statistic is a person with a story. Migrants is not a luxury, it is a choice made under extraordinary circumstances. One migrant recounted, "We left everything behind to find hope, but the journey was dangerous." Another said, "My family worked for weeks, facing hunger and fear. We had no other choice." These testimonials reflect the sacrifices people make in search for dignity and opportunity. Migrants face exploitation, hunger, and violence on their journeys. For example, women and children are politically vulnerable to tracking and abuse among migrants' routes. By sharing these stories, we recognize the humanity of migrants and the courage it takes to leave every familiar thing behind. Migration raises important ethical and practical questions. First, how can the United States address the root causes of migration, such as poverty and violence in Central America? For example, policies that support economic development and education can help create opportunities at home. Second, what responsibility do neighboring countries have to support Venezuelan migrants? Countries like Colombia have welcomed millions of Venezuelans, but resources are strained, and international cooperation is needed. Thirdly, finally, how can migration policies balance security with compassion? While borders are important, policies must recognize that migrants are human beings fleeing unbearable conditions. These questions challenge us to think about our role in building a fair, more human world. To better understand migration, we must consider both its historical and human dimensions. In Harvest of Emperor, Juan highlights how U.S. interventions during the 20th century destabilized countries like Guatemala and El Salvador. These interventions fueled civil wars and poverty, displacing millions of people. At the same time, Rita Buta Mench's testimonial reminds us the personal and cultural cost of displacement. Mencha, an indigenous woman from Guatemala, described how violence drove her community from their land. For her, losing their land meant losing their identity, language, and spirit. These two perspectives, historical and personal, show that immigration is not a simple choice. It is often the result of larger force and the struggle for survival. In conclusion, migration from Central America and Venezuela is shaped by deeply rooted factors: political instability, economic collapse, and violence. Migrations faced extreme hardship, yet their resilience reminds us the universal desire of safety, dignity, and opportunity. By understanding these stories, we can challenge misconceptions and advocate for policies that address the cause of migration rather than just its symptoms. Thank you for exploring this topic with me today. I hope this presentation inspired you to think critically about migration and our shaped responsibility to build a more compassionate future. Thank you.